Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Tomorrow, at a court in Ipswich, a judge will hand down a sentence on an optometrist who's been found guilty of causing the death of a young boy. The conviction is one of manslaughter by gross negligence. The optometrist had failed to spot a dangerous condition in the boy's eyes, and because it went unnoticed, the boy went untreated, and he died months later. Now, we all make mistakes at work, although rarely with such a ghastly consequence, but some professionals worry that there is no clear line between an understandable mistake and an appalling act of negligence. Secunda Kamani reports on the debate over how far professionals should be held responsible and punished for their errors.
In court, prosecutors said there were obvious abnormalities in both of 8-year-old Vinnie Barker's eyes that should have led to an urgent referral to treat a life-threatening condition. The jury found that his optometrist, Honey Rose's conduct was so poor it was criminal. Cases like this are extremely rare. Each is based on unique circumstances, and each one is inevitably extremely complex. But they do raise questions about how we deal with fatal mistakes in healthcare. In one of the most high-profile cases, surgeon David Sellu was found guilty in 2013 of manslaughter. Following that conviction, a group of 300 doctors wrote a letter raising concerns about what they claim are increasing incidents of doctors being investigated by the Crown Prosecution Service. That increase is disputed, and we are talking about low numbers. Since December 2014, there have been 13 prosecutions that we know of, relating to the deaths of 7 patients. A number have been dismissed by judges before even reaching a jury.
It's been a big push that all healthcare workers should declare and be open and honest about mistakes, and that when something goes wrong, as it does in healthcare, they should talk openly with relatives and patients about what's gone wrong, because what we know is that's the thing that makes patients safer. And it's this open and just culture of learning from mistakes which I think is under threat by rising criminal prosecution.
Bethany Bowen was 5 years old when she died during an operation. Surgeons had decided to use a new piece of equipment that had never been used before on a child in the UK. Her mother says that criminal prosecutions should only ever be considered when it's clear the individual is at fault and not the workplace.
It's the wider culture, and that needs to be looked at more carefully than the actual doctor's behaviour. But if the doctor turns up and blatantly disregards the rules and the culture and the environment, doesn't listen to the people around him when they're telling him maybe actually stop, don't do this, then that is a situation where the doctor needs to be held to account.
The CPS defined gross negligence manslaughter as where the death is a result of a grossly negligent, though otherwise lawful act or omission on the part of the defendant. It says the defendant must not have done what a reasonable person would do in their position.
This is a law that applies to everyone, private individuals and to professions of all kinds, construction industries or engineers or architects or even people driving their car along the roads. Everyone has to be held to account if they're undertaking an activity where there's a risk to others. And so the question that has to be asked is whether healthcare professions should be treated differently from others.
Airline pilot Martin's wife died during what was meant to be a routine operation. But he thinks the medical profession needs to learn lessons from how mistakes are looked at in other fields, like aviation and rail.
Most safety critical industries aspire to this idea of a just culture, one where you look at a situation and say, was this inadvertent human error, where we can help to redesign a system to make it better, or was it some form of recklessness or gross negligence? And that doesn't matter really whether we're talking about a frontline individual or a senior executive.
But how do you draw that line between what's inadvertent human error and what's gross negligence?
So the line, the idea of a hard line between inadvertent human error and gross negligence actually doesn't really exist. It's a fuzzy grey line.
In the case of Vinnie Barker, the jury took just 2 hours to convict his optometrist. For them, in this case, the line was completely clear. In a statement, Vinnie's parents told us,
"Our general view concerning medical charges of manslaughter by gross negligence is based heavily on our experience of the justice system and the professionalism and diligence of all involved. We feel that medical professionals practicing competently at the standard at which they are required to perform would not endure an injustice. The benchmark of the breach of their duty of care is too high. The gravity of a manslaughter by gross negligence charge helps to protect patients and safeguard the reputation of medical practices and professionals adhering to good practice against those few who breach their duty of care."
The CPS say the threshold for prosecutions of gross negligence manslaughter is extremely high, and most cases never reach court. For some, these cases are about accountability for life and death decisions. For others, they can risk leaving a workforce too afraid to do their job.
Secunda Kamani there.